Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're unpacking a story that is just absolutely beautiful, but also surprisingly profound. We're looking at the fable of Roro the rabbit and Dodo the duck in the forest of second chances. Now, on the surface, sure, it sounds like a charming little tale about meadow animals, but as we dig into it today, you're going to see how this fictional story actually lays out a brilliant, highly structured blueprint for real-world ecological action.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Just imagine for a second. What actually happens when the heartbeat of an entire jungle suddenly stops? Picture a vibrant, thriving ecosystem that is just completely silenced overnight. That's the exact heavy nightmare our main characters are suddenly forced to wake up to. And you know, the story doesn't kick off with some massive, wide-scale disaster scene. Instead, it starts with a really localized, deeply personal crisis. Early one morning, there's this frantic knock on Roro and Dodo's burrow. It's a starving, hollow-cheeked squirrel and a dust-whiskered rat, and they're just clutching this empty acorn shell. They're pleased desperate. They say, "Please, do you have anything to eat? We haven't found a single nut or seed in 3 days." That right there instantly signals to our protagonist that something out there is terribly, terribly wrong.
Naturally, this localized crisis pulls Roro and Dodo right out of their comfort zone. They're quickly joined by Fira, a sparrow, and Bimo, an old monkey, and you can tell they're terrified. Their feathers and fur are just completely dulled with worry. They guide our heroes away from their safe little burrow to track down the source of this sudden famine. So we are instantly yanked from this micro view of a hungry neighbor straight into the macro view of a massive, widespread devastation.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the destruction, which is honestly just jarring. Think about the vibrant past these animals remember. Chasing fireflies, swimming in cool green ponds, resting on soft moss, surrounded by constant birdsong. Now contrast that with the stark reality of the present when they reach the top of the hill. It's a barren wasteland, nothing but flat brown earth, dry dust, and these deep, violent gouges left by enormous machines that just completely chewed up the landscape. Right in the absolute center of this wasteland lies the 1,000-year-old sacred tree. It was literally the heartbeat of the jungle, and now it's just completely shattered and cracked open on the ground. And this highlights the true cost of ecosystem collapse. It isn't just a lack of timber. As the squirrel realizes in this devastating, heartbreaking moment, they didn't just take the trees, they took everything. Every food source, every habitat, every single sound, just gone. But right when that despair truly hits rock bottom, the narrative pivots beautifully toward active problem solving. Roro goes up and touches the broken bark of the fallen tree, and it triggers something. Dodo suddenly remembers this ancient legend her grandmother used to tell her. It's about a magic that sinks deep into the earth when the great tree falls. And just like that, a massive glimmer of hope sparks right there in the middle of the wasteland. Now, what's really interesting here is the concept of living soil. The legend says this soil remembers how to grow anything, instantly, if it's just given the chance. Translating this to the real world, it's a brilliant allegory for the resilience of a healthy, nutrient-rich topsoil seed bank. It frames the biological solution to their massive environmental problem perfectly. The ecosystem isn't actually dead, right? It's just sleeping, waiting for the exact right conditions to return. But here's the catch, and Bimo the monkey hits the nail on the head when he says, "Sleeping magic doesn't wake itself up, little rabbit. It needs help." Nature has these absolutely incredible regenerative properties, but it requires a catalyst. It takes active, proactive conservation and a concerted effort from a whole community to actually trigger that rebirth. They can't just stand around waiting for the forest to fix itself.
So they get to work immediately. They turn their frantic teamwork into a highly structured, 4-step formula for ecological restoration. Step 1, dig past the dead surface. You can practically see Roro fiercely digging with his strong hind paws, scooping away the dry, cracked earth for nearly an hour until they finally uncover that shimmering, rich, living soil underneath. Then, step 2, plant diverse seeds. Step 3, Dodo scoops up water with her wings. And step 4, let it grow.
Now, I want to pause on step 2 for a second because it is absolutely crucial. It really highlights the absolute necessity of biodiversity. Just look at the seeds Fire pulled from her travel pouch. We've got oak, fig, wild plum, bamboo, sunflower. She actually saved these from her long flights across distant meadows. Without this incredible variety, they simply couldn't recreate a true balanced ecosystem. A monoculture wouldn't work here at all. They literally needed every single one of those unique seeds to bring the real forest back. And when Dodo adds that water, wow, the ground literally trembles. The timeline of this magic taking hold is just staggering. In seconds, single green shoots burst up from the dirt. In minutes, those shoots thicken into sturdy stems, and within hours, Saplings are shooting upward into towering trees, unfurling their leaves like bright green flags. Right where the old tree fell, a brand new sacred tree rises up, taller and prouder than ever. It's an awe-inspiring, incredibly rapid rebirth that completely transforms the landscape.
Restoring those keystone elements immediately triggers a massive chain reaction. We're talking cascading ecological restoration here. Vines start curling up the old dead stumps, ferns unroll across the bare dirt, and these vibrant violet, gold, and red flowers just explode into bloom. Even the cracked mudlines instantly fill up and become flowing streams again. And of course, this brings back the bees, the butterflies, and families of monkeys who are just shrieking with joy to have their home back. Suddenly, that starving squirrel and rat have more food than they've seen in weeks.
Let's move forward a bit and see how this builds into the big takeaway. Because it's one thing to fix a crisis, right? It's entirely another thing to ensure it never happens again in the first place. The story shifts its focus here. It moves from just celebrating a restored ecosystem to implementing real, lasting conservation.
And that brings us to a profoundly important lesson delivered by Roro. He says, the forest can come back once, but it's better if we never let it fall in the first place. This is all about proactive maintenance. The animals didn't just throw a party and go back to sleep. They made a collective pledge. They actually took turns watching over the trees, watering the roots, and planting new seeds every single season. They completely stopped taking their home for granted and stepped up to become active stewards of their environment. Which leaves us with a final and, honestly, a pretty vital question to think about. How will you protect your forest? We all have ecosystems. Whether we're talking about our local communities, vital resources, or the natural spaces we heavily rely on. We simply cannot wait for them to be reduced to flat, brown earth before we finally decide to take action. So, what is your forest? And what proactive steps are you taking today to ensure it never falls in the first place? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating blueprint with me today on The Explainer. Keep learning, keep protecting, and I'll catch you next time.